thick, rubbery flesh within 5 hours. Especially gruesome cases, the victim's body splitting apart to allow extra tendrils of flesh to sprout from the open wound. Occasionally, an infected person will stop moving and become rooted to the ground in a set location. Once it is settled, their flesh will spread itself across the ground, encasing all nearby objects in flaps of scar tissue. The infected that maintain their mobility are highly aggressive, even violent, and will attempt to infect any living thing that comes into their line of sight. The disease does not only infect humans, it can take over any living organism within a matter of hours. Due to the highly contagious and dangerous nature of the disease, safe observation of infected specimens and areas is only possible with drones and mounted cameras. This brings us back to Herbie, the first such mounted camera to record footage of the infected area. Herbie was deployed to an infection site, also known as Site A, without any damage. He remained at the outside perimeter of the village for 2 hours, observing several infected humans and fire damage to many of the homes, before following an infected to an intact house. Herbie's camera feed captured the infected person entering the house and sitting down at the table inside. There were several other infected humans in the house, and one again. It was an arduous process, and eventually, even Abel began to tire of it. The duo fell into a tearful embrace. Abel asked his brother why he killed him so long ago, and Cain apologized, saying it was the actions of a younger and more foolish man. In that moment, the two finally reconciled, and having fulfilled their bargain with their creator, both finally crumbled into dust. Peace, at last. As we said, this didn't happen to the Cain and Abel of our universe, but when universes are more numerous than grains of sand in an endless desert, such a thing has indeed happened somewhere out there, perhaps in a kinder universe than our own. We can only hope that Cain and Abel may someday get to meet and find the same resolution, but until then, these brothers will remain one of the most dangerous and fascinating duos in the Foundation's catalog. Now go check out SCP-087 The Staircase and SCP-1730 What Happened to Site-13 for more strange and tragic mysteries from the archives of the
Aussie dairy's always been part of healthy workouts. Right there for the guns. If lean muscles matter to you, choose Aussie dairy.
Fuck off, man. Fuck off, man.
Dr. Seymour Tracy is an ordinary American man. He lives in a 2-bedroom home with a white picket fence in an ordinary suburban town in the Midwest. He gets up every day and goes to work. Then in the evening, he comes home to spend time with his family. From the outside, Seymour and his family couldn't be more normal. But in reality, there's something very abnormal about him, his life, and the neighborhood where he lives. Seymour Tracy isn't just some office worker. He's a researcher employed by the SCP Foundation, just like all of his neighbors. Because this isn't an ordinary neighborhood.
Let's pause it. It's night time, so let's go to bed. Wake up in the morning, get something to eat, then play a horror game in VR. What the humans call horror games. My room, where's my room? Here. Good night, sir. Good night. I'm going to, yeah, I know, you're gonna lock the door. $7 AM. Now let's grab out this here, then head to, can you unlock the door for me? Sure. Let's close this, close this. Go to the cafeteria, get something to eat, and yeah, play VR. Play the alien game. You know what I mean. Okay, so cafeteria. Here we are. Hey, I would like a burger, please. No problem. Stay right there, sir. SCP-001. All good. Here you go, sir. SCP-001. Thank you. Let's go. Sit down here. Then eat. And yeah, go play VR. That was fucking good. Fucking good burger. Let's go to my room now and play VR. Let's head to my room, basically. Welcome back. Thanks. Go on to Xbox, to the whole game, connect the VR, press play.
To the tree that the children hadn't colonized.
Let's have a joint. Here we go.
Neutralized SCP-1762. These ashes don't pose any harm. They won't bite, burn, or seem in control of your mind. But few can hear the sad story of SCP-1762.
Start
Do not
game.
be haunted by its tragic and mysterious tale. It weighs heavily on the hearts and minds of all who came into contact with it during its ultimately brief time in the Foundation's hands. And to think, it all started with a simple little box with an even simpler message. Here be dragons. The box, to look at it, was really nothing special. A simple cardboard box, 32 centimeters by 20 centimeters by 26 centimeters, spray painted silver inside and out. Its short message scrawled across the lid in black permanent marker. It appeared on the doorstep of Foundation agent Scott Thomas, who, after determining it wasn't a bomb, anthrax, or a deadlier kind of anomaly, turned it into his superiors. That's when it became Yoshihiro Takanaka's little pet project. Safe-class SCPs are rare treats for any overworked Foundation scientist. The box itself, known as SCP-1762-1, is certainly important, but what's really interesting is what resides within the box. If you'd open the box yourself, you'd find that it's empty.
Damn.
However, when the box chooses to open itself, it's an entirely different story. The box would sometimes open and emit great plumes of thick black smoke that would quickly dissipate. Around 20 seconds after this, an SCP-1762-2 would emerge from the darkness of the box. 1762-2 is the collective names given to all the beings that exit 1762-1, which are, as you may have guessed, dragons. Eastern, Western, big, small, and presenting in a rainbow of colors. These dragons appear to be living origami sculptures made from copy paper, and have been known to fly together in large groups and interact playfully with nearby humans. These little paper dragons would then swoop around their containment chamber, delighting all who were fortunate enough to see them for up to 3 hours, at which point smoke would begin pouring out of the box once more, and the dragons would return home. They'd fly through the smoke, disappearing past the rim of the box, and then the lid would close once more. The dates on which the box would open were seemingly random and indeterminable, and didn't didn't appear to work by any kind of external logic. And what's more, the box would sometimes act as a hub of communication between this world and another, known simply as fantasy. Messages written or carved into various materials would appear on the lid of the box, mostly after instances of 1762-2 emerging. This communication, though, would always be one way. Attempts to pass messages back through the box never resulted in success. The Foundation staff could only be observers of the strange world of fantasy, never active participants. So why is this particular SCP considered so tragic? We're going to answer that question right now, but just know that what is learned cannot be unlearned, as much as you might wish you could forget. If you're ready, then it's time to learn about a period of time that lasted just under a year, during which a strange and sad series of events took place, now known as the Jabberwocky event, an event that took Here-Be Dragons from safe to neutralized. You've seen that SCP-1762 would communicate with Foundation staff via written messages after each instance of the box opening. The very first message the box gave up after arriving at the site read, "You have found us. Thank you. It has been so long since we last saw each other, friends. The peace has been upheld. The giants of Behemoth have kept their word and have not caused any trouble since you last came and gave the order. We missed your company. How has your..."
It's certainly not good. I very much doubt it's the morning either. Sorry. I feel like death. I don't know how you people put up with hypersleep regularly. You get used to it. I don't do long haul very often. Most legal execs don't travel further than the coffee machine. I'm surprised Wayland Yutani felt the need to send legal at all. The loss of the Nostromo and its cargo cost the company a lot of money. If I can save the case with a conclusive accident report, it'll look great with my superiors. I'm sorry. That was insensitive. Realize your mother has been missing for 15 years, and you...
It's okay. We'll both get what we want, right?
Have you seen Samuels? He's probably been up for hours.
I'll catch up with him.
Family bin. Do you know how to work your room? You're welcome to visit anytime. Later it gave another message, expressing confusion and concern on behalf of Fantasy's inhabitants. It's strange to see how much your world has changed. It is even stranger to see how we now appear in this place. In Fantasy, we are much bigger, or maybe you've grown taller. Fantasy is still the same. We hope you can visit us like you used to. Though our room is as grand as ever, yours has shrunken. We do not understand. Naturally, Foundation scientists were concerned. They weren't sure what exactly the messages were referring to, or how they could possibly help the inhabitants of Fantasy. Of course, things all...
Samuels, did you wake up early?
Well, I don't...
Because another joint.
I was just inspecting the Torrens facilities. A well-maintained ship. I realize it's a very similar model to...
The Nostromo.
Yes, M-Class. A later pattern, but close in spec.
I've worked engineering jobs on ships like this.
Of course. Is Taylor okay? She's not a seasoned traveler. Hypersleep may have been punishing for her.
We talked. She seemed nervous.
I hadn't noticed.
Shit.
She's a skilled executive. Should help us with any legal issues we might encounter.
All personnel to the bridge, approaching Sebastopol Station.
Looks like we're up. you all had a restful journey.
The Torrens is in very good order for an old M-class captain.
She was a wreck when I bought her. Took a few years and a lot of contracts to refit. She pays for herself now.
You said we're approaching Sebastopol Station. Are we docking?
I believe your contact is Marshal Waits, is that right? I'll hail Sebastopol and arrange boarding with him.
Good. Let's get this done.
Don't worry, Miss Taylor. Routine. In and out. Connor, how are we doing?
SMG loaded and calibrated. Approach vector locked.
Retcon so I can say hello.
Channel open, Captain.
Does everyone have their briefing documents?
You can watch the approach on the monitors.
What the fuck? Okay.
Can we see it?
Switch to monitors. Sebastopol Station.
Is that damage?
It looks like damage.
Punch up 74, tight angle.
Looks like the dry dock bay is screwed.
I can't bring the Torrens into that.
This is a commercial vessel, Torrens out of St. Clair, registration number MSV7760, calling Sebastopol Traffic Control. We're carrying 3 passengers on a Wayland.
Tawny Bond, you're holding the Nostromo flight recorder unit. We request immediate permission to transfer the passengers port side over. Hello, Marshal? Marshal, this is the Torrens. Say again? The station's comms seem pretty screwed up, so I fitted Samuel's suit with a radio booster. I can only keep the Torrens in transit for 24 hours.
You'll have heard from us by then.
Stay put.
Stand by. My contract doesn't cover bloody spacewalks. It's the only option, and it's perfectly safe if you do what I tell you. Depressurizing. Fuck. Hating this. Just shout on me, Taylor. You too, Samuels.
Affirmative.
What happened here? My God, Ripley. You're doing good, Taylor. Just keep moving! Taylor, Ripley, hold on! Samuel! Taylor! Respond! Anybody!
shit. Save. Huh. Humans. Press play.
Only 10 dragons appeared the next time.
Let's have a join.
A few balls of crumpled up construction paper that shook violently before stopping all movement entirely. This message accompanied it. The giants were foolish. Your room was not ready to accept them yet. We're sorry, friends. We hope that we can still see you, but time is growing short for our happiness. And sadly, this message spoke the truth. As the next time the box opened, only 5 dragons exited. They were carrying the following message and flew straight back into the box after depositing it on the ground. Tensions are rising. Fantasy is becoming darker. We, the serpents and the hybrids, are furiously trying to hold them back. But the giants and elves wish to strike and make an entrance. They say that your family has grown stupid and ignorant. We hope this is untrue. It would sadden us all greatly to know that you are forgotten. It seemed clear that fantasy was speeding towards some kind of terrible conflict, and it was perhaps too late to do anything about it. The next attempt at communication came from a single dragon with a crumpled body. It collapsed to the ground and appeared to die, its body unfolding into a small piece of paper that bore a single heartbreaking message. Goodbye, friends. But 2 hours after this message was delivered,
Shit.
the lid opened again. Only this time the box let out a huge jet of white-hot flame, reaching temperatures of 1700 degrees Celsius. The terrified and confused researchers heard roaring and the sounds of an intense battle from within the darkness of the box. Many of the observing staff found themselves overcome with emotion, afraid that they were perhaps witnessing the death of fantasy play out in front of them. And even hardened Foundation researchers and guards were moved by the event. At 8 p.m. that night, the box ejected a huge quantity of paper. The majority of it was either torn, burned, shredded, or crumpled into balls. And all instances of 1762-2 were announced deceased upon official examination. It seemed that fantasy's bloody war truly was taking its toll. And even the forces of the Foundation, one of the most powerful and resourceful groups the world has ever known, were powerless to do anything to help. All they could do was sit, wait, and see what the result would be of this paper-crafted war. The box continued to open and close sporadically over the next 6 weeks as the war raged. Would often emit more spouts of deadly fire and vomit out more piles of ruined paper. Though researchers noticed that each time it released less and less paper. Even more disturbing, matter resembling muscle and tissue was ejected from the box with increased frequency. It was clear that whatever was left of fantasy was in great peril. The researchers were desperate to know what was going on, but the box would remain closed and inactive for the next 7 months. When the box did finally become active once more. It wasn't in a way that the researchers were familiar with. The box opened, but not a single dragon exited. Not even a crumpled piece of paper came out. Instead, researchers found what appeared to be an ancient and desiccated scroll of parchment. The words written on it were smudged, and some were stained with blood.
Harris, Turner, get back here now. We have a track somewhere in engineering. Lock the terminal down, kill the power, and don't forget your reports. Make them thorough. We're gonna need our paperwork to be bulletproof when this shit's over. Great job.
Save. Yes.
It made clear that things had fallen further into darkness than they had ever before. The message read, "Are you still out there, friend? We miss you dearly. Fantasy is no longer safe. Our haven, your beautiful creation, is gone. The giants are dead. The centaurs are dead. The birds have fled. We're going to bury your room. We cannot risk hurting you. This is our goodbye. Maybe one day, your family can build another room. This may be a hollow hope, but we..." Cherish this thought. An hour later, the box began to convulse violently and let out more plumes of thick black smoke. For a moment, the researchers entertained the hope that it might be the return of the dragons, but no such luck. The box began to sag, tear, and collapse, as though it was on fire on the inside. Parts of the box began to char, and small holes were burned through the silver paint. Perhaps the saddest of all, the words "Here be dragons" were burned from the box. Not long after, one more message appeared. Inside the box. It was a papyrus scroll depicting a hand-drawn image of a beautiful mountainous landscape with huge trees and waterfalls. In the distance, a dragon appears to fly away for the last time.
Fire up deals are on now at Barbecues Galore. The Ranger 4-burner barbecue with stainless steel hood just
Fuck off.
A message written on the back read as follows. "Master says that we won't see you again. We are sad, so are the remaining others. We once filled each other's heads with dreams and goals. It is so sad that we cannot share them any longer. Master says we have to go. He says that he will make us a new fantasy. He says you cannot be a part of it. We are sad. We love you. We will not forget you. We are scared. Will you forget us? When this document was removed, streams of salt water began to leak from the box, healing its burn scars. A few minutes later, the box was returned to its original state, save for one big difference. The text scrawled on the lid no longer read, "Here be dragons." Now, it said, "Here were dragons." The Jabberwocky event was over. The box, now neutralized, would sit in Yoshihiro Takanaka's office for commemorative purposes, never to release another message. Or so we thought. In 2015, SCP-1762 spoke to us one more time. The box shook and began emitting great plumes of purple smoke before it fell to the ground. There it ejected two objects, a purple crystal, later identified as an amethyst, and a large leather-bound book. The box continued emitting smoke for another 40 minutes before finally disintegrating. Upon further inspection, there was a single message carved into the amethyst. "One last time." And what about the book? Consider the greatest fear of the inhabitants of fantasy, that they would one day be forgotten and left behind by us. The book was sent to help prevent that. It's an extensive catalog of the creatures of fantasy, their strange and wonderful ways in their strange and wonderful world. Even if they're gone, they won't be forgotten. And perhaps one day, we'll tell you those stories too. But that's a tale for another day. For now, go check out SCP-087 The Stairwell, and The SCP Foundation is no stranger to pure evil. Whether it's a reptile that wants to end all life, a sadistic old man with his own torture dimension, or the personification of death itself lurking beyond a limestone cavern. But what if there was something even worse out there? The embodiment of chaos and cruelty, existing across multiple realities and dimensions. And what if it was coming for us? This is the Scarlet King.
My
Believed by
dad.
many to be the ultimate evil behind much of the trouble the Foundation has faced, and some even speculate that fighting him was the reason the Foundation was created in the first place. But what exactly is the Scarlet King? He's known by many names, almost always including some allusion to the color red, and then a reference to royalty or power. Harak, Kaharak, the Red Shah, the Crimson Khan, PTE 616 Mendez Ex Machina, the Laharaja, and, of course, SCP-001, to name a few. And like many of the Foundation's mysterious enemies, stories about his true nature and origins abound and are often contradictory. According to the official SCP-001 files of Tufto's proposal, symbology of the Scarlet King has existed in multiple cultures throughout history, with the king often depicted the same way, as a huge red demonic figure, often wearing a gold crown or other headdress indicating royalty. He shows up looking similarly within different cultures' mythologies, despite existing at different points in history, or them not having the means to communicate with one another. A number of entities that the SCP Foundation is familiar with are believed to be somehow connected to the Scarlet King, including SCP-2317, a wooden door leading to the realm of a being known as the Devourer, who's expected to escape and cause an apocalyptic event in the next 30 years. But really, there's no way of knowing just how many SCPs are directly connected to the Scarlet King. Strangely, the Foundation's official file on the Scarlet King once designated his containment class as Keter, but that has since been downgraded to Safe. According to the file, any attempt to change this designation is likely to lead to horrifying results. It is widely known that the Scarlet King still has considerable influence over a number of groups, individuals, and anomalies in our universe, and if ever he made his way into our universe, it would likely lead to the irreversible damage of reality itself. So then why Safe? And why are the O5 Council so adamant that it remained that way? Getting to the bottom of this mystery is exactly why we're here today. But to fully grasp the true nature of the Scarlet King, we must first understand the man whose life and fate have always been tied to it, Dr. Robert Montauk. If that name feels oddly familiar to you, it's because of its association with one of the Scarlet King's most recent attempts to enter our reality, SCP-231. This SCP, often referred to as the Brides of the Scarlet King, was formed of 7 women. 7, by the way, being an extremely significant number for the king, all kidnapped by the most recent in a long line of the king's devoted cults known as the Children of the Scarlet King. Each of these 7 unfortunate women were impregnated with anomalous horrors, such as the infamous SCP-682, and every time one of these horrors were birthed, a catastrophe occurred and the mother died. At the time, Dr. Montauk was a prominent researcher studying this anomaly, and as 6 catastrophes had already occurred, pressure was mounting to figure out a way to prevent the final.
What am I supposed to do
As he
in
was
this
working on the
bitch
issue,
game?
Dr. Montauk was struck with a personal tragedy, the mysterious disappearance of his 14-year-old brother Jacob. In his fear and anger, Montauk believed that this must have something to do with the Scarlet King and his disciples. Wanting revenge, Montauk proposed an idea so horrifying that the details were never made public. A procedure known as 110 Montauk, to be performed on the final bride at regular intervals. However, this wasn't the end of Dr. Montauk's fraught relationship with the Scarlet King. It was just the beginning. To give you some perspective on just how dangerous the Scarlet King is, the SCP Foundation and the Global Occult Coalition decided to put aside their differences and form a joint effort to stamp out the children of the Scarlet King. They were successful in this mission, and even managed to capture the children's leader, a mysterious man named Depeche Spivak. Dr. Montauk, who became the lead researcher on 231 and 2317, was naturally the first choice for interviewing Depeche about the true nature of the children and of the Scarlet King. Dr. Montauk could never be the impartial interviewer that the SCP Foundation wanted, though. The suspicion that the Scarlet King or the children had something to do with the loss of his younger brother still lingered just beneath the surface. Like a lot of cult leaders, Depeche was extremely cryptic in his answers to Dr. Montauk's questioning. He'd already heard of the doctor from the reputation of the horrifying Montauk procedure, and was surprised to see him so calm and courteous in person. A few key facts about the king and his cult were revealed in the first few rounds of questioning. The children had once worked with the Serpent's Hand before being excommunicated for their allegiance to the king, and they had stolen sacred texts from the mystical Wanderer's Library to assist in their summoning rituals. Depeche also revealed that the Scarlet King is bound by 3 laws: the law of blood, the law of concrete, and the law of howling. Dr. Montauk, confused and frustrated by Depeche's secrecy, had to learn more. He found an old memoir from a former member of the Children of the Scarlet King, Jack Hirsch, who had the ability to invade the minds of people from the past and experience what they experienced. He recounted a battle between the Scarlet King and his followers, and a group of time-traveling Turkmen warriors from SCP-3838. Hurst saw both sides of the battle. From the perspective of the Children of the Scarlet King, their lord ruled over them from an immense fortress embedded in a volcano. From the perspective of the Turkmen, the children were starved and beaten peasants, commanded by the king's voice in the roaring howl of the wind. Montauk also found extensive records of summoning rituals performed by various Scarlet King-aligned cults. Interestingly, some of them incorporated the use of carved SCP Foundation symbols. What could this mean? Montauk returned again to Depeche, who finally gave him the truth about the law of blood. This is the law of the Scarlet King. It's defined by poverty, violence, starvation, hate, and most of all, fear. Like the